Peru, over the Andes. Now keep in mind, this is the 1930s. There's no pressurized cabins here. She's flying in an open cockpit over the Andes into Brazil, from Brazil up to New York. The longest flight, solo flight by a woman ever. The first woman or man to get over the Andes. And the first solo flight around South America by a man or a woman. First complete flight by a land plane around South America by man or woman. First American woman to fly the Andes solo.
So you can see she has a brilliant career.
She's here shown with the famous aviatrix, Amelia Earhart, and this guy is Roscoe Turner, I think was his name, or something, Barnes or something like that, I can never remember. He was a stunt pilot, and there she is climbing in. Now keep in mind, once again, this is the middle 1930s. She is getting into a $38,000 airplane in the middle of the Depression. Does anyone know why? Well, her parents lived next to somebody you probably never heard of. They're called the Rockefellers back east. That's where she originally was from. So in the Rockefellers, and her parents apparently had some cash on hand. So they bought this plane for her, and this is the plane that she did most of her records in. And there's Amelia standing up there. There's also another famous picture, which you've seen a million times, of Amelia sitting in the hangar reading a book up against the side. Anyway, if you notice in that picture, you will see the front of this aircraft. So that picture was taken almost just a few minutes later from this one, or even before. Anyway, Burbanker, Laura Ingalls, she had a promising career. She had all these records. How come you've never heard much about her? Well, turns out that Laura Ingalls got in with the wrong Nazi crowd. And Laura Ingalls was accused of being a Nazi. She joined, what's the other guy's name? I don't know. Lindbergh, him. She joined Lindbergh's group to stay out of the war. And Lindbergh was, we're not going to call him a Nazi sympathizer.
Well, she took it a little further than Charles Lindbergh.
She went farther than Lindbergh did. She actually took money from the German consulate. A baron who was working at the consulate wanted her to promote America staying out of the war and gave her funds to tour around and do that. She did not register as an agent of the German government with the American government, and that's what she was convicted on, and was convicted as a Nazi spy and sent to prison.
Now bear in mind, she's living in Burbank. What were we doing in Burbank in the 1940s at a certain aircraft plant? We were building Hudson bombers and P-38s, and we've got this Nazi agent there, and the government became concerned about her.
And just when you think it doesn't get stranger, it turns out that Laura Ingalls saw herself as a modern-day Mata Hari for her time. She did not like the Lend-Lease program. She accepted the money from Think, but she asked J. Edgar Hoover if she could be a double agent. Ooh. Anyway, Hoover didn't like the idea. He just turned her down flat. And anyway, so that was the end. And so after that, she gets sent to prison. And while she's in prison, she got beat up. And I'm not going to say that's a good thing.
It's an interesting idea, you know, honor among thieves. Okay, so you might be a thief, I might be a robber, but neither one of us are Nazis, so we're not going to have any Nazis among us.
Yeah, we're not going to have no Nazis in our prison. So they beat her up and they moved her to a prison in West Virginia. And after that is when she was released, and she came home to Miss Laura Ingalls up there at 1480 Country Club Drive, listed as an aviatrix and a Republican. So that's what the R stands for.
She's a Republican?
Yes, she's a Republican.
You never told me these things.
Sorry, I thought you knew R.
Oh,
it's R&D. R&D.
Yeah, I know it's D.
In the old directories, you know. Anyway, and here's where she was buried.
Sure doesn't mean retired?
Huh? No. No, it doesn't.
I hope it means retired. I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
All right. So anyway.
Where was she buried?
Where was she buried?
Under that stone?
I don't know.
Did she ever have a husband?
No, she never got married. As a matter of fact,
She sounds mighty confused.
there's an article on her where she says she gives up love for the air. And it's a beautiful article. Unfortunately, I've only recently, I know a lady who is on our Veterans Committee by the name of Doris Vick, who lives up on Country Club Drive and was her neighbor. And she knew her. And she had all sorts of interesting things from her life. And I've only recently got them, so we haven't had time to A, put them in this slide presentation, or B, on Burbankia. But they will be coming, so to add to this. So Laura Ingalls, someone you never heard of. She finished out her life here in Burbank. She died in 1966, although it says 67 there. She wasn't buried until then. I think this is back east because she was taken back to her family back east. And anyway.
It's probably on Burbankia.
Yeah. But anyway, the bottom line, she finished out here teaching driving school. Here in Burbank. She had her own small business teaching driving school.
Teaching students how to make cars not airborne.
Yeah. But that's Laura Ingalls, the Laura Ingalls you've never heard of or seen on TV.
De Los Wilbur. The last time we did a Burbankia slideshow, Mike came into, well, lend possession of a great scrapbook of all these old Burbank photos from 1917 from this gentleman, De Los Wilbur. And some are on the wall. And the great thing about the internet is we posted a page, and then it wasn't long, where we heard from his granddaughter. So that was really cool. And I've done this kind of thing before. Carolyn Erickson, his granddaughter, she gave us some more information, and we've got that posted on Burbankia as well. Next slide. Oh, here's an honorary Burbanker, Johnny Carson. Did a lot for Burbank. Appointed Burbank's Goodwill Ambassador by Mayor Leland C. Ayers. There he is, accepting a very large Goodwill Ambassador certificate of some sort.
It shows you now, though, they're about this big. So think times have changed.
Goodwill Ambassador ain't what it used to be.
Yeah, ain't what it used to be.
And then in Mike's office, he's got this great 1981 Welcome to Beautiful Downtown Burbank poster. Johnny Carson welcomes you. We're going to be talking about Johnny Carson later on, and I will be teaching you how to do a proper Ed McMahon impression.
Also, if you notice in this map, the one thing I love about it is everything that's there isn't here anymore. So start looking around. I mean, pick any corner and look in there, you know.
The city on the move.
Yeah, my favorite is the London Butcher Shop is gone.
And we're staying in the Holiday Inn right now.
So yeah,
that's still there.
Yeah, but it's only one tower. So.
Right.
Anyway, okay.
Lightning Lord.
You're on.
All right. P-38 flyby in 2011. It was great. Mike and I were up on the balcony watching these aircraft, these famous Burbank aircraft, come whizzing around the Verdugo Mountains and doing a flyby of City Hall. That's a P-38 flyby City Hall. And P-38 poem. This is so cool. I've been practicing this.
He's been practicing because the prose in it is horrid. The guy was not really a poet, but that's why Wes is going to read it.
The P-38 poem by Frederick Arnold. Oh, Hetty Lamar is a beautiful gal, and Madeline Carroll is too. But you'll find if you query a different theory amongst any bomber crew. For the loveliest thing of which one could sing this side of the pearly gates is no blonde or brunette of a Hollywood set, but an escort of P-38s. Yes, in the days that have passed, when the tables were massed with glasses of scotch and champagne, it's quite true that the sight was a thing of delight, us intent on feeling no pain. But no longer the same nowadays at this game, when we head north from Messina Straits. Take the sparkling wine every time. Just make mine an escort of P-38s. Byron, Shelley, and Keats ran a dozen dead heats, describing the views from the hills of the valleys in May, where the winds gently sway. In the air, it's a different story. We sweat out our track through the fires and flak. We're willing to split up the glory. Well, they wouldn't reject us, so heaven protect us. And until all the shooting abates, give us courage to fight them. And one other small item, an escort of P-38s. Isn't that great?
For that, because that was a tough read. I couldn't do it. But I'd like to talk about belly tanks. As you can plainly see,
there they are on a P-38.
arrows hit the belly tanks down there of a P-38 so they could fly greater distances and bomb our enemies and strafe them and protect those bombers that we just heard about. But What do you do with a bunch of surplus belly tanks after the war? Yeah, build race cars, of course. This is Burbank.
1952, this is Burbank, right?
We got the Old Crow Speed Shop here in Burbank, took the belly tanks and they built them into these nice little race cars. You see there they are removing a belly tank off of a P-38. And here it is down here, made into a small race car. Anyway, they took them out to the Bonneville Salt Flats, in case you didn't recognize the salt on the tires there. And they did time trials in them, and apparently because of the aerodynamic shape, who would have known? They were pretty fast. So, and then we get into the P-38 assembly.
I love that color shot of the gal, Rosie the Riveter kind of gal. And we had lots of Rosie the Riveters in Burbank during the war. And we'll talk about more of this shot below. But they assembled, those are P-38s being assembled on Buena Vista and Empire. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And go to the next slide. I think
Yeah.
we have, you broke it out.
This is
Right.
This is the.
There's a great shot of P-38s being created. Now, when we do the video portion of this, you're going to see the same area where they bring a dwarf into the fuselage to help with the riveting right here in this scene, in this movie from 1942. But there are the P-38s waiting to be delivered. Go on to the next one. And here's where Mike describes what's what.
This is the shot broken down. Now, how many of you are familiar with the Empire Center over there? Okay.
Big shopping area.
You see this embankment? That embankment's still there, and you drive by it. You've got the Sports Authority, or whatever they call it now, on this side, and that David's Bridle is sitting up on top of that. So,
Laser beam.
yeah, no laser sights. Anyway, the street up there going through, Lincoln does not go through the Empire Center anymore, but it did back then. It went through Lockheed. Far on the back over there, you can see Buena Vista and Van Owen where they cross there. And in the back, and unfortunately the projection doesn't give it to you, but you can actually see the top of the dome of the Aviator at Valhalla there. This is a very interesting shot, and as Wes mentioned, we're going to actually see this shot in motion. We're going to show you live inside footage of the Lockheed plant during World War II.
But in 1978, when I worked at Lockheed in B1, every morning I used to take a Cushman scooter and I would ride out to the same area where my boss's boss's boss would take his cigar, smoke it, arrive into work, throw it on the ground. I would drive by on this Cushman with a stick with a nail on the end of it, pick up his stogie, throw it in the back, and then carry on. And I was doing that kind of work at Lockheed. Which is why I went to college, by the way.
That's good incentive.
That and the industrial solvent fumes.
Yeah.
Oh, and this is one of my favorite articles. This is a flyer testified, take it from Lieutenant Willie E. Matthews of this city, fighter pilot recently returned from Tunisia. The howling twin-boomed lightning strikes cold terror to the hearts of German airmen and ground forces alike. They were supercharged, and they had a whine and a sound unlike any other aircraft. And I recently finished a book that said, you don't want to if you're an enemy pilot, you never want to be in front of a P-38 because those things were armed for bear. You would go down. That's just what it was. No enemy pilots will face a Lightning head on. When I saw them diving at the bomber, I swung over and pointed my Lightning's nose right at their formation leader. They veered off. So you gotta love something that terrifies Nazis, right?
Don't even have to fire shots. Now, is anybody familiar with Ansel Adams? Okay. Who took these pictures?
Ansel Adams.
Ansel Adams' nephew was a Lockheed employee. And Ansel Adams came out here and he took pictures of the daily grind for his nephew. He got pictures of him in his house eating breakfast with his wife and then him coming out, which are all on Burbankia. But he took these shots. One of the things I want really bad is this Lockheed.
I want that Lockheed.
That's all embroidered into the
really
back.
badly, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but he took, and there's a whole series of them, and if you'd like, go on Burbankia and you can see them there. But Ansel Adams, one of the most famous black and white photographers in history, landscapes and such, did a whole series on Lockheed, and they're beautifully done.
And there's one picture he took that I really love. It shows a huge amount of cars of Lockheed workers next to a sign that says, "Don't park here." Don't park there. Wings for the Eagle, 1942 Warner Brothers. Filmed at Lockheed. We're going to be showing a segment from it. You have no idea what I went through to get this thing tape recorded one day. We found out about this, and then I discovered the very next day it was going to show on Turner Movie Classics.
Turner Classic Movies.
And so we had to run around and desperately find who can record this for me. So we got a recording. Go see it later on.
This is,
Go ahead.
okay, all right. This is a section on Lockheed history. If you ever want to go on Burbankia and read this, this is an excellent, well-written. It's Lockheed's history from Lockheed's point of view from the very beginning. And it's excellently written. It was printed in 1957 and given to all employees, and there is a newsletter. And it's 9 chapters. It has all sorts of photographs in there, old photographs from Lockheed that you've never seen. Anyway, it's totally, the whole thing is printed out on Burbankia. And it's a great read. I love that front line there. It says, Gross hitches his wagon to a star. And the judge says over here, because he bought it in bankruptcy, he says, let's see, I hope you know what you're in for doing, Mr. Gross. And but the Grosses took the Lockheed and built it into the super aircraft manufacturer it is today. Ooh,
Fortress Burbank. This is something that Mike found. Actually, we talk on the phone every week, every Friday, and we talk about things that should be and could be on Burbankia. And so we were talking about this artillery unit being stationed in Burbank and how they use lights and smudge pots and how they were protecting this part of the California coast, and especially Lockheed, because once again, here's a vital strategic asset, the Lockheed plant. Mike said, oh, I've got a book about those guys. Really? Yeah, it has pictures of Burbank and everything. And why don't we have it on Burbankia? So, members of various area anti-aircraft units were stationed in Burbank during World War II to protect Lockheed. One such was the 121st AAA Anti-Aircraft Artillery Gun Battalion. They were also known as the Desert Wolves, so you'll see these cartoons of wolves, and they called themselves the Hut 2 Hut. 121. Burbank was good duty according to unit history because they were visited by starlets and generally made to feel like heroes.
Here is the little character that they had drawn throughout the book. They had some very good artists in the book. And this is the Hut to Hut himself here. And what's he singing there? He's singing Bing Crosby's favorite tune, and it's the San Fernando Valley.
How many of you have heard that song, the Bing Crosby hit from night? If you go to the California Adventure near Disneyland, they play it on the PA system.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the opening of the book. Now,
I'll do this one. Artillery. Okay, so one of the things we wanted to do is where were these artillery pieces located in Burbank? So we started asking around. Plus Mike knew some things. Artillery was located, first of all, in a vacant lot across the street from the front door of Burbank High School. That bit of information comes from my father-in-law. He remembers it. Mike was told that an artillery emplacement was located in the hills just above where Palm Park is located now.
Has anybody ever had their kids play up at Palm Park, or grandchildren or something like that?
See the concrete
You played
works?
at Palm Park.
The concrete
Right above
works
home
up there?
plate, there's a huge chunk of concrete up there. And why do they have a stupid palm tree lined road leading to that dumb piece of concrete? Well, the reason is that's where they drove in and got to the gun that was up on top of that large piece of concrete.
We learned that there were smudge pots along Burbank Boulevard. Think about it. If you're being attacked by planes, you want concealment, you want to light up the enemy, and you want to fire at them. So there's all the smudge pots. An artillery piece was located at the corner of Victory and Burbank Boulevard, the former 5 Points, where there is now a McDonald's. And of
better
course,
use.
they were located at Lockheed, and you'll see that as well.
Anyway, Fortress Burbank was a very interesting idea. It was concentric circles moving out in a wider thing from here all the way to Sepulveda. They started out on the outer edges, and they had searchlights only. And the searchlights would lock onto the planes and guide them to the next searchlight group who would follow them in, and then the inner third ring was where the artillery started hammering. And they had artillery from that point all the way in and planted right in the center of Lockheed. These pictures are from the LA Times article during that period in time. They plainly state in the articles that they can't tell you where they are. But
Classified.
but in the book, The Hut to Hut, They tell you where they are by a little secret. You see these things right here, these little buildings that they built for their little bivouacs and places to sleep and stay out of the elements. Well, in the book they mentioned they were built out of airplane engines. You'll notice it says Pratt & Whitney aircraft engine on the bottom.